Hen in a Bonnet, Myrtle Wilson's Counterfeit Transformation by Walter Bowne. F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby presents the American dream as a corrupting force that destroys those who pursue it without understanding its true nature. While Jay Gatsby's tragic pursuit of wealth and status has received extensive critical attention, Myrtle Wilson's parallel journey deserves equal scrutiny. Myrtle Wilson's transformation from garage owner's wife to Tom Buchanan's mistress reveals how the American dream specifically exploits and destroys working-class women in a patriarchal society, making her both victim and perpetrator in a system that offers no genuine path to autonomy. Fitzgerald establishes Myrtle's tragedy through her literal and figurative transformations. When Nick Carraway first encounters her in Chapter 2, she already embodies a paradox of vitality and decay. There was an immediately perceptible vitality about her, as if her nerves of her body were continually smoldering. This vitality, linked throughout the novel to both life force and impending death, defines Myrtle's essence and foreshadows her violent end. Myrtle's attempt to transcend her class through performance becomes most evident in her costume changes during the New York apartment scene. Fitzgerald deliberately revised his manuscript, crossing out clothes and writing costume. I have a facsimile of the handwritten text, emphasizing that Myrtle is playing a role rather than experiencing genuine transformation. She progresses from dark blue crepe de chine to brown figured muslin to an elaborate afternoon dress of cream-colored chiffon. With each change, Nick observes, her personality had also undergone a change. The intense vitality that had been so remarkable in the garage was converted into impressive hauteur. This transformation is fundamentally counterfeit, symbolized by the apartment's central decoration, an overlarge photograph, apparently of a hen sitting on a blurred rock. Looked at from a distance, however, the hen resolved itself into a bonnet, and the countenance of a stout old lady beamed down into the room. Well, Myrtle is that hen in a bonnet, symbolically. Superficially transformed, but essentially unchanged. One can place aristocratic trappings on working-class origins, but the underlying nature remains unaltered. Hen in a Bonnet, Myrtle Wilson's Counterfeit Transformation by Walter Bowne. Part 2, Power Dynamics and False Promises. Myrtle's relationship with Tom Buchanan exposes the gender dimensions of class exploitation. While she commands her husband, George, get some chairs, why don't you? She submits entirely to Tom's demands. I want to see you, Tom says intently. Get on the next train. All right, she responds immediately. This dynamic reveals how the promise of upward mobility through male patronage actually transfers women between different forms of male control rather than offering genuine independence. Tom's attraction to Myrtle stems not from love or even desire, but from an exercise of power. As Nick observes, her face contained no facet or gleam of beauty, yet she carried her flesh sensuously, as some women can. Tom, married to the beautiful Daisy, seeks something different in Myrtle, the pleasure of control over someone desperate for what he can provide. Their relationship is purely transactional, though Myrtle may believe otherwise. The apartment scene where Myrtle assumes the role of lady of the house, I told that boy about the ice, and complaining about the shiftlessness of the lower orders, it demonstrates how temporary access to wealth corrupts her into mimicking the very class attitudes that oppress her. She becomes complicit in her own exploitation, adopting the values of those who use her. Hen in a Bonnet, Myrtle Wilson's Counterfeit Transformation by Walter Bowne. Violence and Symbolic Destruction. The violence that punctuates Myrtle's story, Tom's breaking of her nose and her eventual death, carries deep symbolic weight. When she dares to repeatedly shout, "Daisy, Daisy," at the apartment party, Tom broke her nose with his open hand. This foreshadows the more devastating violence to come, when Daisy, another Buchanan, driving Gatsby's car, strikes and kills Myrtle in Chapter 7. Fitzgerald's description of Myrtle's death is deliberately brutal. Her breast is lacerated and flapping. In a letter to his editor Maxwell Perkins, Fitzgerald insisted on this graphic imagery, wanting Myrtle Wilson's breast ripped off. The symbolism is multi-layered. Breasts represent both nurturing motherhood and sexuality, yet Myrtle embodies neither maternal care nor healthy sexuality, only the commodified version that Tom purchases. The cosmic irony of her death completes her tragedy. Thinking Tom has come to rescue her from George's suspicions, she runs toward what she believes is her salvation, the yellow car. But it carries Daisy, not Tom. Wrong car, wrong person, wrong life. This mistake encapsulates the larger error of her existence, the belief that male patronage could provide genuine escape from her circumstances. Hen in a Bonnet, Myrtle Wilson's Counterfeit Transformation, by Walter Bowne. Lecture 4, The Feminine Trap of the American Dream. Myrtle Wilson's story illuminates the gendered limitations of the 1920s American society. The novel takes place in 1922, only 3 years after women gained the right to vote, yet women still lacked access to higher education, property rights, financial independence. For working-class women like Myrtle, marriage represented the primary path to economic security. She admits she didn't realize George's poverty until after their wedding, when he had to borrow a suit for the ceremony. Critic Samuel Charles Johnson notes that both Myrtle and Gatsby yearn toward the rich and the beautiful, but unlike Gatsby, her panting vitality is wholly physical, merely pathetic, where Gatsby's quest is spiritual and tragic. This distinction parallels the gendered nature of their parallel pursuits. Gatsby can at least imagine himself as a romantic hero, while Myrtle's options are limited to mistress or wife, both forms of dependency. The flower symbolism of her name, Myrtle, reinforces this tragic timing. The crepe myrtle blooms late in the summer, unlike Daisy, which flowers in right now, mid to late June. Myrtle's late blooming in life corresponds to her late death in the novel's summer timeline. She achieves her brief moment of imagined prosperity just before her destruction. Hen in a Bonnet, Myrtle Wilson's Counterfeit Transformation, by Walter Bowne. The Broader Indictment. Lecture 5. Myrtle Wilson serves as Fitzgerald's critique of how the American dream fails working-class women specifically. Unlike the men in the novel, who have various paths to wealth and status, inheritance like Tom, crime like Gatsby, or professional advancement like Nick, women must rely on relationships with men. This dependency makes them vulnerable to exploitation while simultaneously making them complicit in perpetuating the system that oppresses them. Her death also serves as the novel's broader theme about the disposability of the working class. Tom, who orchestrated much of the destruction, emerges unscathed, while George, Myrtle, and Gatsby all die. The wealthy retreat back into their vast carelessness, leaving the poor to suffer the consequences of rich people's games. Coda. Myrtle Wilson represents the American dream's particular cruelty toward working-class women. Trapped between the roles of wife and mistress, both forms of male dependency, she has no path to genuine autonomy. Her transformation through costume and behavior represents not upward mobility, but a performance that ultimately cost her life. She embodies the gendered tragedy of a dream that promises transformation while offering only exploitation. Fitzgerald's portrayal of Myrtle as simultaneously victim and perpetrator, aspirer and destroyer, reveals the complex ways that oppressive systems recruit their own victims as participants. Her story demonstrates that the American dream, far from being a meritocratic promise, is a rigged system that particularly exploits those with the least power. And in the 1920s, that included most women. Through Myrtle Wilson, Fitzgerald exposes the American dream as, in the words of critics Charles Samuels, in reality a nightmare that destroys those who believe in its false promises. That particularly exploits those with the least power.